Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're here for the Flagler County Board of County Commissioners Workshop. It's Monday, March 20th. It's 1 o'clock. If you'd all please rise and help me as we salute our flag. Republic for which it stands. And now if you'd all join me in a moment of silence as we think about all the good things we have in our lives and how much we have to be thankful for, and also to remember our first responders and our men and women in uniform stationed around the world. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. Well, welcome everybody for being here. Got a small audience this morning. First up on the agenda is an economic development discussion. And Amy, I assume that you're leading that? No, Heidi is leading that, excuse me.
Actually, if this is on, there we go. We've actually been working together, pulling all the information together. We're pretty excited to share that with you. We do have a PowerPoint presentation. You should have in front of you, I think, a copy of it along with some potential incentive programs. I just want to make sure that you all receive that before we start. Oh, thank you. All right, so good afternoon, and thank you for allowing us to provide you with an update on our economic development efforts. As you know, local economic development is the process of encouraging business development to boost the local economy, provide new work opportunities, and improve the quality of life for our entire community. Let me start by providing the agenda for today's discussion. As local government, we must prioritize economic growth to create jobs, keep up with rising costs, and maintain a competitive advantage over other counties or regions that our potential constituents might be considering. So today, we're going to take a look at what our competition is doing, with a look at other states and where Florida compares to them. We're going to provide you with some updated statistics on our community, as well as projections into our future. We will cover our work and development, which includes what we've accomplished so far, and provide some insight into what we're working on. And lastly, what our region is doing regarding economic development incentives, and how do we create an environment for business growth, and what options do we suggest as staff to be used for Flagler County economic incentive packages. So let's start by taking a look at Florida's competition. To rank the America's top states for business in 2022, CNBC scored all 50 states on 88 different metrics in 10 broad categories of competitiveness. Each category is weighted based on how frequently states use them as a selling point in economic development marketing materials. And the 10 categories that were used were workforce, infrastructure, cost of doing business, economy, life, health, and inclusion, technology and innovation, business friendliness, education, access to capital, and cost of living. So these are the top 10 states right now, according to their study for 2022, as far as the top states for doing business. So where does Florida rank among the crowd? Well, Florida's ranked 11th. So they're just outside of the top 10, but I will show you a comparison of the top 20 states so that you can see how Florida performed. So here's a look at the top 20 states based on the data reflected in that CNBC's annual study. It provides scores of the 10 key categories of competitiveness, and they actually provided some definition behind each one of these categories for a little bit further understanding of where they got the information. A lot of their scores, the information comes from a variety of sources. They use things like their annual report, as far as their combined financial report, as well as whatever information is being shared through their different chamber economic parties. But they also look at other data sets like things like the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, labor statistics, Census Bureau, disease control. So they've got a whole list of different additional sources where they pull the data from. It looks like there's probably about 50 different sources that they compile their numbers from. So we'll go ahead and take a look at the individual ranking of Florida. So this is a detailed look at individual scores and rank for Florida in each category. Over the past year, we've seen significant improvement in Florida's score in the areas of workforce, economy, technology and innovation, and education. However, we did lose some credit in the areas of infrastructure, business friendliness, and access to capital. In general, Florida could improve in the areas of life, health, and inclusion, as well as that business friendliness. Those seem to be the two areas with the lowest ranking among the scores that we received. But overall, I think in Florida, things look very good. As we improved our ranking from 2021, we were ranked number 17. And in 2022, we're ranked number 11. So,
Is that low grade in business friendliness, is that a result of the fighting within the last couple of years between the governor and how we're doing advertising and stuff?
well, if you look at
Play into that?
If you look at business friendliness, the way that they deal with it, this would have been just over 2022. And what they're looking for are the fact that companies follow the path of least resistance. So it includes legal and regulatory framework that doesn't overburden businesses. They measure states' lawsuits and liability climates, regulatory regimes covering areas such as trade and labor, as well as overall bureaucracy. So they're looking at how hospitable the states are towards emerging industries, including things like cryptocurrency and cannabis. I know that Florida is pro-business, and so you'll probably see some of these things change, especially when we start making different investments into some of the categories. But that's kind of like the overall theme of the business friendliness part. But based on warmer weather and proximity to Florida, as well as other factors, these are Florida's top competitors for economic development. There are others in close proximity, such as Alabama and South Carolina. However, they're ranked at like 33 and 36, respectively. So for this, they're not really considered direct competition at this time. But like I mentioned, Florida continues to make significant progress with promoting our state as open for business. When you look at the state's ability to bounce back after COVID and how quickly we were able to do that, I think it's a testament to the governor and his ability of, being open for business. And last year, as well as with the governor's proposed budget, we've seen unprecedented funding going into technology, education, public safety, and infrastructure. So I anticipate that Florida's ranking is only going to continue to improve. But I wanted to take a look at where we compare today based on the 2022 scores against the state-level competition. So you will see some change, I think, next year, but this, again, is based on what happened in 2022. And we did increase, like I said, from 17 down to 11, which is significant, so.
Significant legislation, too, in the works on technical education.
There is, yeah.
The one thing I'd say on that, too, the one that business friendliness, we do have a problem in Florida with a lot of legal, people suing each other. We're way up there in the country and that kind of thing. So I think that probably really hurts us in the business friendliness thing with all the lawsuits that are going on. Other than that, I don't think it's so bad.
No, I would agree, and that is one of the categories that they look at, is lawsuits and emerging trends. But, and like I said, I think that Florida's doing a great job, and it's reflected in our increased score in the ranking. But this is a look at the, where we are among our competitors, which are the North Carolina, Texas, Tennessee, Georgia. So looking at the top chart and using color, apply color to each category, using green as kind of like the best among the select competition that we're looking at. And then you look at yellow, which is kind of like a neutral, kind of middle of the road among the competition. And then that kind of like pink-red color, which is really for the areas where maybe you're falling a little bit short among your competition. You can see that Florida is lagging in that, in the 10 categories examined, with Florida scoring middle of the road for 4 of the categories, and then maybe falling behind a little bit in the others. But then when you, I think that there's other factors such as income and sales tax rates that might not have been examined by CNBC with their review and what they were looking at. So the bottom table is a look at Florida with the state competition using data provided by the Tax Foundation. And so when you look at that in comparison, Florida does very well. So I think that there's a lot of different deciding factors that go into it when you're trying to relocate a business. You know, and while we don't have complete control over all of the factors, there are some ways, I think, locally that we can become more appealing. And we're going to go over some of those options a little bit later in the presentation when we start to discuss options being used within our region and throughout the state of Florida. So overall, though, I don't think that it's bad. You know, I don't think that there's, you know, any perfect way to determine it, but at least it's a foundation that we can work with, So here's a look at the incentive programs currently offered in the different states. And so the Council for Community Economic Research in Arlington, Virginia, they maintain a database of state business incentives. So when you're looking at this map, the darker shades represent higher numbers of incentive programs that are available. However, the number of incentive programs available doesn't always correlate to how well those states perform with economic development. But according to their research, there are little over 2,300 programs that are available in the United States right now. And they have them broken down to the top 5 program types that are currently being offered based on the number of programs that exist. So those top tiers going across the entire country, the number 1 is providing tax credits. Then it's followed up by grants. And then you have loan and loan participation, tax exemption, and then other programs that they may have. And these, again, are all at the state level. And then we'll kind of focus a little bit more on where Florida sits with this.
Do the grants column, is that just payout? That's where you just pay them? Say, come to my state and I'll give you $1 million.
Well, it could be. They've got you'd have to like tap into each one of these. Where I got this information from is actually an interactive map. So if you follow that link, you can click on each individual state and it'll bring you to that state and tell you what specific things they're doing there. So it's kind of hard to tell, but I mean, giving them a grant is definitely one of the higher end options that they're doing, so.
Just thinking through here, do they include state debt in this rankings?
You're talking about the top 10, the categories? I don't think debt was one of them.
That's a big deal right now, California compared to Florida, or a lot of other states that have a high state debt rate.
Yeah, I don't think that, that they're looking at the debt
I mean,
in the
that affects the
state.
economy.
Not one of the categories.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, part of the economy, I think, would be stable finances and a solid economy within the state, but I think they also look at like the gross domestic product growth and job growth year over year, things like that, but not necessarily debt per se. In the report that I saw, I don't see where they actually called it out like that, but. So looking at the information provided by that Council for Community Economic Research, here is a look at Florida with our competition. As you can see, Florida State offers 39 different incentive programs, which is tied with Texas, who happens to be ranked number 5. And the programs offered in Florida are more than North Carolina and Tennessee, who are ranked number 1 and number 6, respectively. And then you look at Georgia. Georgia is ranked higher than Florida at number 10, but lower than other competitors, but yet they have the most incentive programs. So I don't think that it's telling that it's necessarily just the state incentives that are driving that score, but if you recall, when we were looking at the taxes, Georgia ranked among the worst with the competition with regards to corporate income tax and individual income tax rates. So I think it's a combination of all of the information to really, hone in on why people are moving where they're moving. So with that said, we're going to take a look at Flagler County. And so here are some Flagler statistics based on information provided by our property appraiser's office. This represents a breakdown of Flagler County's tax base from the 2022 tax roll. Naturally, our largest tax base is from residential property, which accounts for almost 87% of the values. And although our community has a great amount of agricultural property, it is taxed at a lower rate. So it makes up for less than 1% of our tax base. And then taking a look at commercial and industrial property, collectively it adds up to about 8% of the tax base, but you only have 6.4 that's currently improved. The remaining 1.6 is vacant land. This is an area that I feel we need to focus on growing, as we can't rely on residential properties to carry the weight of providing services. As you know, residential properties are capped at that 3% for homestead and then 10% for non-homesteaded. There is legislature out there this year that looks to reduce that cap. I think it was down to 2%. I'm not sure on the non-homesteaded what that cap would go to, but these caps don't apply to commercial and industrial property. Therefore, they tend to pay a little bit more in the tax base. And typically, your businesses are using less of the services than what your residents would use. I think it's important to see that, especially when you talk about like land use and the future of zoning and things like that. You only have, even looking at your existing property the way it's zoned right now, you only have 8% available for those type of commercial or industrial activities. So here are some more statistics based on information provided by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. This is a look at the private sector jobs within our community in comparison to the state of Florida and the country. Overall, we seem to be in alignment with the state with regard to the percentages of jobs in either service-providing industries or goods-providing industries. We are higher than the U.S. in service-providing, but a little bit lower in the goods. I did circle 2 categories in blue, which are construction and leisure hospitality, as these are 2 areas where Flagler is well above the state and U.S. in percentage of jobs. Overall, you all know Florida relies heavily on tourism, so it doesn't surprise me that Flagler is that high. We experience a lot of tourists that come to our area to enjoy what Flagler has to offer. Based on the amount of growth we've been experiencing in our community, it's no surprise that construction is a little bit higher as well. I think that you'll continue to see that happen. But the 2 areas that I did circle in yellow represent areas where we are below the state and U.S. in percentage of jobs, which are jobs related to manufacturing and financial activities. So those would be 2 areas that as a community we should consider expanding, especially as our community continues to grow and we're looking at bringing in what type of businesses. So,
Just from a financial activity, would that include local banks or not?
any financial institution, anything financial,
So it would include?
yes.
Seems like we have a lot of banks.
We seem to be lower than the norm, and maybe there's other opportunities there other than just banks. But so taking a look at this information provided by Florida Department of Economic Opportunity, here's a breakdown showing the number of people who work in Flagler and live elsewhere, those that live and work in our community, and those that live here but work outside of our community. So there are just over 10,000 people who come into our community to work that live somewhere else. And you've got just over 25,000 people who live here but travel outside of our community to find work every day.
Can we draw an analogy to workforce housing by saying that apparently we don't need it? We have 25,000 people that choose to live here and work elsewhere. So that must mean if they can live here affordably.
They could. I think where you see the need for housing is probably more in the service industry or your lower paying jobs that
Oh,
we
yeah, I
have.
know where they are, but is that is all the 10,000 people then? Huh?
The 10,000 are the ones that work in Flagler, but they live somewhere else. Those are probably your service industry people who can't afford to live here. I'm not saying it's all of them, but probably a large number of those. And then you have the folks that live here naturally, but they find work elsewhere. So we'll
I
go
don't
over.
think that's a good indicator. I mean, I can.
No, it's just kind of obvious that I should say something, but yeah, I don't think you can make a connection, but it does say that 38,000 people live or work here, live here and can make enough money to live here, or whatever they're doing, so.
I know
Okay.
younger starting out workers are finding places outside of Flagler to live, not in Flagler.
Oh, yeah, no, I agree. Just,
Yeah, I think for young families or young people starting out or those that are working in the service industry who maybe don't earn a high enough wage find it very challenging to find a place to live here. So it wasn't intended to be a deciding factor on whether or not we need or have enough housing, but just more or less to show you the breakdown of the people that are either traveling into our community to find jobs here or those that are traveling outside. And that brings up the next slide, which is in breaking down the information. These are the top 5 counties where these people travel to. So for the first column, here are the number of Flagler residents who travel outside of our community to work. So they live here, but they travel outside. The majority are going south to Volusia County. And then the second highest grouping of numbers is going north, whether it be to St. Johns or Duval County. And then the section on the right, again, showing the top 5 counties of people who come into Flagler to work, but they live somewhere else. The majority of those folks are coming in from Volusia to the south and from the north in St. Johns County.
Shocked by the people driving to Alachua.
yeah,
And these are just the top 5. When you look at the data, and I didn't show all of it, but you've got people that go down to Brevard, Indian River, a lot further south. So
So I know this data comes from the DEO, but is it based on what? Surveying unemployed people? Or what is it based on? I mean, it's covering roughly, the last slide, about 48,000 residents out of the 125,000. But do we recall where this?
I don't
Is this
recall.
really inclusive of everybody, or is this just who participated, or?
This is based on whatever information
Yeah,
was
from the
out there on their
state, so
site.
it's
Without
hard to
going
say.
back to their site and reading the details, I don't recall off the top of my head. But here's a look at Flagler's top 5, the top 5 industry sectors in Flagler County in order from top to bottom. Naturally, number 1 is the tourism cluster, so anything related to tourism, followed up by retail, and then we've got healthcare and social assistance, administrative and waste services, followed by construction. And then when you're looking at the county's top 5 employers, the top of the list, number 1 is Advent Health, followed by ALSW, which is known locally as Yellowstone Landscape. Then you've got Public Supermarket, the Reunion Club, which is the Hammock Beach Resort, followed by Boston Whaler. So those are your top 5 industry sectors and your top 5 employers for Flagler.
That's all private, obviously.
I'm sorry?
Private, that didn't include public.
Those are just private sector. So in looking at the U.S. Census Bureau data on population change that has occurred in the state of Florida between the years 2010 and 2021, Florida has seen overall a 15.6% increase in population, and there were actually 15 Florida counties that lost population. Those counties that lost population are shaded with kind of like that light tan color on the map. But here's a breakdown of the 10 counties experiencing top growth. So starting with Orange County as the number 1 all the way down to Pasco. Those are the counties that experienced that top growth during that timetable. And then when you look at the top growth rate, we are in the top 10 for growth rate. We experienced a little over almost 25,000, I think it's 24,806 new residents during that time frame, which based on our population equated to an increase of 25.9% increase. Again, I don't think that that's really a surprise to anybody due to the increase in construction as well as the number of vehicles that you see out on the road. I don't think that's really a surprise to anybody. But based on the BEBR, or the Bureau of Economic Business Research projection, what communities are expected to receive an increase in population over the next 4 million people as they move into the state of Florida. Again, no surprise that Florida is predicted to be among the top 10 in growth rate with an anticipated amount, Flagler is predicted to be in the top 10 growth rate with anticipated about 35,800 people moving to Flagler, which will equate in an estimated 29, almost 30% increase in our community's population. So what can we do to prepare for this new expected growth? So let's start by taking a look at what we've done so far. So here's a partial list of work in development focused on economic development, and it's focused on things that we've been able to accomplish with regard to economic development in Flagler County. This has been a collaborative effort among our staff as well as partners in the cities, along with the Flagler Regional Chamber, JAX USA, and Northeast Florida Regional Council. We have updated the Flagler County Strategic Plan, as you're well aware, which does include a focus area on economic vitality. Last year, we also worked with the Northeast Florida Regional Council to update the council's comprehensive economic development strategy, which is something that's updated every 5 years. We work closely with them as well as JAX USA. We held an economic development retreat, which was between the county and city staff as a way of sharing information, discussing strategies, and making sure that we deliver on each other's expectations. This retreat resulted in the creation of quarterly meetings between our group to further advance our work on economic development. And we are also members, as you know, of JAX USA. We share information with the cities, but to further advance that communication and collaboration, we're looking to add the chamber president, Greg Blase, to advocate and represent business within our community. Again, working in partnership, we've established some great opportunities by teaming up with JAXPort and becoming part of the Foreign Trade Zone number 64. Working with Palm Coast on the creation of a certified economic opportunity, which involves a census tract within the town center area of Palm Coast. We've worked to provide the PACE program to all parts of Flagler County. And Flagler County is also designated within the high-tech corridor of Northeast Florida. And there's a lot more to do, so let me share with you what we're working on or what we have in progress. So we are currently working in partnership with Enterprise Florida and FPL We're participating in a strategic site inventory program. It's a 5-phase program that builds an inventory of quality greenfield sites to us to be competitive for real estate assets that are needed to compete for quality job-producing projects. That SSI qualified site strikes a balance between operational needs and protection of vulnerable environmental, cultural resources. It starts with discovery of potential sites suitable for local industry targets. And then the SSI advances properties through due diligence, landowner engagement, and then graduation to the market. The strategic site inventory program drives successful economic development, and we're excited to be starting this process, which is starting this month. As you know, we've received 3 proposals for the update on our comp plan, so we're receiving those presentations of the top 2 firms and look to bring a formal bid award to you for approval so that we can begin to update our comp plan. It's anticipated that the update will take about 18 months to complete, but simultaneously, we're going to be advertising to update our land development code. And we hope to have a firm under contract by the time the comp plan is done so that the LDC can begin and that we're not lagging behind in that area. Although we do have our own marketing materials for Flagler, we are also working with our community partners on the creation of some collaborative marketing materials, which will include county and city demographics, and various programs and incentives being offered by all of our organizations as kind of like a unified front for Flagler. This will result in the creation of that unified package being offered to prospective and existing businesses in support of business growth in our community. Currently, the cities of Bunnell and Palm Coast do offer some economic development incentives. In speaking with the staff at Palm Coast, they are currently working on revising them, and they are anticipating bringing them to their council in the coming months. So they are looking to update what they're currently providing. This is an area that we as staff have been pulling together information on so that we too can develop and create some economic development incentives to further promote our community and provide a competitive advantage. Additionally, Flagler County Executive Airport has 42 T-hangars under construction, and we continue to pursue aviation-related businesses, and actually on your agenda tonight, you should have a new business coming to Flagler, which is the Roberts Aviation. So we are looking at ways to continue to promote our airport as an economic hub as well, so.
Just clarification, I talked a little bit to you about this. At the airport, we have those, sites ready for development around the outside of the airport. But apparently, some of them have to be aviation-related and some of them don't. Could you give me just a little, I think I asked you that question when we were on our trip.
Yeah, that's true, and Roy, I don't think Roy is here, but the ones that are airside, that are actually on the airfield, they need to be aviation-related. The ones that are non-airfield can be other businesses that are not directly tied to aviation. But if you've got a hangar or you've got a business that backs up and you're literally right there off the runway or the taxiways, you have to be aviation-related.
So the Army National Guard headquarters would be in an area that doesn't necessarily have to be aviation?
That's correct.
That road that goes in there, okay.
Well, you notice where Teens in Flight are, and then there's that church.
Oh, yeah.
They've got 2 sets of addresses. The one set of addresses are on the airfield side, and the other set of addresses are on the parking lot side. And that's how they do it.
That
That's how
area
they do it.
there, to me, is one of our prime places, and I just wish we would have been a little more successful in bringing businesses into both.
And I think that Roy's doing a good job in trying to bring people. I know that he's been talking to some other folks that aren't quite ready to pull the trigger, but as you know, sometimes these things take time. The gentleman that's on your agenda tonight, when I met him, he had said that he had been looking at Flagler for upwards of, I think it was 10 or 11 years, and he's going to be coming here as a new business to the airport. He's actually going into the former hangar used by the sheriff's office. And he is aviation related with fixed wing aircraft as well as helicopters. So That's
I believe
exciting.
in Roy's presentation, he was going to talk about the economic impact of the airport to the community.
He will. I know he's got that scheduled tonight. The FDOT does an annual report provided to the different airports, and there is a whole segment on the value of the Flagler Executive Airport and what that does to stimulate the local economy and what that looks like as far as a return on investment. So it is part of his presentation, so I won't tell you too much about that, so you're not bored later. So here is a look at our strategic plan. As you're well aware, we've got the focus area of economic vitality. Many of the objectives can be addressed within these goals, within some of the activities that we're currently undertaking. For instance, goal number 1 has a breakdown of different things that can be addressed through the comp plan update, along with the LDC rewrite, through the designation of industrial park lands, as well as participation in the strategic site inventory program. That'll prime us for, identifying those areas where we can grow and develop. When you look at Goal 2, a lot of that, the objectives within that goal can be addressed within the creation of those collaborative marketing materials that I talked about. Continuing to work with our community partners, which are all the cities located within Flagler, as well as Northeast Florida Regional Council, JAX USA, Enterprise Florida. The aviation-related businesses, the T-hanger construction that we talked about, that'll just further enhance that goal number 2, creating that competitive advantage for businesses to come into our community. And then goal number 3, which talked about promoting and marketing Flagler as a desirable place to live, work, and visit. Through those marketing materials, again, that goal will be addressed in some fashion. But what else can we do to further advance these goals, and what do those options look like? So,
You don't mind if we ask questions along the
No,
way?
go ahead.
Okay. What's the end game on the strategic site inventory? What is the ultimate goal for that program, and so what are we looking forward to?
they come in and they do an evaluation of all of your existing lands. They do an inventory of what you have available, what's prime for development, and they actually work with you to develop the different criteria or the different information as far as getting it to the point of finding willing people, landowners, that are willing to sell their property for development. So it's going through a process of determining what you have and trying to align it with companies, businesses that are looking to come in here. And some of those properties may or may not be on the market right now, but they're going to come in and do kind of like that high-level look. I know that Amy and her team probably have a lot more information than what I have, so if it's something specific, I'd welcome them to chime in, but I'm not quite sure if it's more detailed than that, or...
It could just be another presentation down the line, just as we look at that, at a regular meeting, not necessarily a workshop, but just an update.
Yeah, actually, we're kicking off. We have the first meeting workshop with the SSI folks this week, so as we start to get some information, we can definitely come back and just give you an update, so...
When are we looking to implement Goal 1, the comp plan and LDC updates?
Well, right now, as I mentioned, we did the advertisement, so we had 3 firms. We went through the review process. The top 2 ranked firms we're going to be bringing back to do, a further review of those firms, and then we hope to make internally a selection to bring forward to you. The process takes 18 months. So from the time we award the bid to whatever firm we choose, it's going to be 18 months. But we're going to advertise for the scope for the land development code rewrite simultaneously. So that way, by the time the comp plan is nearing the finish, we'll have a firm already selected to take over that LDC rewrite. So we try not to lose any time there.
So I'm new, and so I just have this one question in particular, because I'd been working with or talking to Sean and Adam today about it. If there is an immediate need to update within the LDC or comp plan, do we typically do it here, or do we just wait for the...
No, you can do it. It's just a matter of, and I don't know the technical term, but I don't know what the technical term is, and I think maybe I'm confusing Adam, but like if there's, if it doesn't align with your current land use, I mean, there is a provision that you can go in there, and as long as your comp plan is compliant, you can do, I forget the technical word, you know what it is, Sean? Maybe you can help me.
We have small-scale amendments and expedited reviews that can be done to the comp plan, but I think Commissioner Pennington's more focused on the land development code
Right.
when there are surgical or sort of small, precise changes that are needed as opposed to a more
Yeah.
comprehensive rewrite.
Yeah, I think I'm more interested in how do we go through that process, and very particular is into the airport and statute 333 that I emailed you about earlier, but what do we do to do that process? Do we need to wait for this, or is it something, can it really wait 18, to her point, 18 months to get us into compliance? That's I think my question, Sean, is if we know, so the FDOT, for instance, I'll just bring it up. The FDOT had asked, I think this past winter, when we were going to implement Florida statutes, particularly Chapter 333 with airport zoning, because they actually have entire statutes dedicated to airport zoning. And I don't see it in our LDC. And they had been asking about it, and I think we've kind of in the interim said we're going to do it, but are we waiting for this 18 months to pass to do it while we're, have development, creeping in around it, around the airport now, and they're under such a growth over there because there's a lot of things within the statutes that I'm worried that we're overlooking, following.
Right. Commissioner Pennington is referring to a statute that requires each county with an airport to implement zoning regulations around the airport. And we had some halting efforts with that, I believe back when Mr. Coffey was here. It involves a lot of interactions with the city of Palm Coast because of the location of our airport, and it was shelved, I guess. And the plan of staff at the present time is to make that part of the more comprehensive land development code rewrite. However, as with other items, if the board would prefer that we expedite that in order to come into compliance with state law in a quicker time frame, then certainly staff can take that and run.
Well, Sean, my take on that, because I remember looking at this, was we could implement it, but it's not going to help the people around our airport because they live in Palm Coast. So I think we have to do some kind of joint thing with Palm Coast.
Well, they are required to be involved in this, right? According to the FDOT and the Florida statute, that all municipalities that own land around an airport must adhere to statute 333 with airport zoning. So while their land, ultimately is being developed, they were supposed to as well change out their LDC to follow airport zoning guidelines, which has very specific rules about how close housing can be within a runway.
Well, I think it even talks
Yeah.
about making sure it's someone buying a house, the realtor.
Right.
The realtor has to
And
say, oh,
it's
by
been
the
around
way, there's an airport right there.
It's been there since at least 2016. The FDOT is asking the county and other municipalities when we're going to update, but if we wait another 18 months with all the growth that's coming in,
Yeah.
and especially his
Oh, yeah,
growth. Oh, sorry.
we don't need to talk about that.
Yeah.
We're done with that. Okay, so Heidi, if you would just look into that and see if there's any intent by Palm Coast to work with us on that, and maybe we can add it to the stack, things we got to get done with them.
Yeah, just
Wrote a note.
one other comment on the comprehensive plan. If I'm not wrong, I think last year, because of state rules, we did have to make some modifications to the comprehensive plan. I think a little bit was about the school, some of the school issues, and we did do, Adam, I remember, didn't we do some changes there? So it can be changed in the interim, and I think we did it last year because of some state rules.
I think the area that we had to fix was the peril of flood element. I think that was one of the areas that we had to change to
I knew
bring
we
it
did
into
some, but-
compliance.
So it can, all I was trying to say is it
Yeah,
can be
that's what I
done.
was wondering. Do you have to wait till the 18 months, or is there any way we can, when we have these little things come up that need to be worked on.
Palm Coast is going through their comp plan review. They're ahead of us slightly in their comp plan review with the same intentions of doing the land development code, but, you know, we all need to work together.
Right, that's all, that's my suggestion anyway. But make sure, see if they're including that in their rewrite, because we'll do it for sure.
I will. I wrote a
Okay.
note to
All right,
take
thank
a
you.
look at that. So what are economic development incentives? So economic development incentive programs take the form of assistance provided on a discretionary basis, either by federal, state, or local government bodies in order to attract or retain business operations, promote new business activity, or encourage job retention. Incentives may be statutory or discretionary and may take the form of a lot of different things, such as grants, rebates, utility rate reductions, on-site improvements, income, sales, and property tax incentives, workforce development, land grants, no interest or low interest loans, other forms of direct and indirect assistance, including infrastructure development. So those are just some of the ideas of, what's out there, what's being used to entice economic development. But at the end of the day, any economic development within Flagler County is a win for all of us. We're not in direct competition with the cities. We all benefit from business development within Flagler County, within our community. Our competition is really within Florida, is with other counties and communities that are vying to attract the same businesses. So we collected some information from neighboring counties and those within our region, along with incentives being offered by the cities within Flagler County. As you can see, there's a wide variety of offerings, with Clay County having the most to offer, followed by Osceola County. But we need to work in partnership with our city counterparts so that we can make sure that Flagler is the most appealing within our region, if not the state. So when you look at the table there, the one in green that are up in Duval, those are programs that are only being provided in a very small, specific area. It's kind of like an older section of Jacksonville. The ones that are in red, these are currently under review or consideration. When we talk to the city of Palm Coast, I know that they're looking to revamp what they're providing. They're currently, as I mentioned it before, they're going to be bringing that to their council. So just wanted to share that with you. So we're looking to offer attractive incentives to qualifying, relocating, and expanding companies within targeted industries, such as advanced light manufacturing, agri-technology, aviation and aerospace, financial services and financial technology, life sciences and healthcare, intermodal logistics, which is your warehousing and distribution centers, or corporate headquarters. At the end of the day, we're looking for industry that offers high-paying jobs. So that's where we're looking to promote and incentivize industries. As staff, we believe that this is the ideal targeted industry for Flagler County's future moving forward. So working hard to create a friendly environment that supports business growth and opportunity. We've taken a look at what other Florida counties are providing, as well as within a closer geographic region. This helps to identify some potential options for economic incentive packages. We have evaluated the many options and are looking for ways that really sets us apart from the others. We've identified these specific areas as proposed incentives that could be offered to targeted industry-specific businesses as a means of providing incentives and grants. This assistance is provided on a case-by-case basis, whether it be through job creation or quality of wages, capital investment being the significant deciding factors. These serve as tools in our toolbox, which we will then bring forward before the board for consideration and approval when deployed. So These are just some of the things that we're thinking about. At the end of the day, whatever is being offered will come back to the board before it would be provided to the individual businesses. So taking a look, we're working hard to create an environment that supports business growth and opportunity. So in looking at what other Florida counties are providing, as well as within that closer geographic region, this really has helped us hone in on some potential options for incentive packages. We've evaluated many options and identified these as the proposed incentives that could be offered to targeted industry-specific businesses as a means of providing incentives and grants. And, after we've had a discussion and some consideration, if approved, this is what it would look like from a comparison of incentive packages options among the other counties within our region and within our area. So we would essentially have about 8 different programs that we're able to provide and assist with. I know previously some of the feedback that I had heard while working in Flagler County, not in this position, but just being here, that it's not just about the job creation. I know that was one that we talked about previously, job creation. What we're focusing on is more of that wage incentive where it's the high-paying jobs. It's the ones that are paying 25% above our median income, or it's somewhere around 60% above poverty level, so that you can have high-paying jobs where people can afford to live in this community. So that's really what we're focusing on here.
Could I just ask one quick question?
Sure.
Because I think it shows my ignorance, but I'm not sure what REV grant recaptured in enhancement value. Could you just give me a couple of words
So
on that?
that's if Northeast Florida Regional Council, I think, talked about Baker County recently did something
When we were up there, right?
where they have, I think it was a Walmart or some facility like that. And so if you kind of hold, I don't know if we gave you the breakdown. Do you have a copy of a list? It's only, should be 1 page, double-sided. It kind of gives you some details. You should have gotten it. That kind of gives you the details or the breakdown of what some of these programs would look like.
Okay.
And that's coming to you from Economic Development. But
I had this page.
when you look at the one in Baker County, what they do is you'll utilize kind of like that base year assessed property value, and then whatever that percentage of the incremental increases, you can go ahead and reinvest that money into additional opportunities for development. So it's similar to what they did in Baker County.
They have a lot of land up there to the north part of their county, which they can kind of pull this off.
We have a lot of land, so I think it is definitely something to consider here. And even, on a smaller scale, it doesn't necessarily have to be major tracts of land, but it is, looking at, right now, if you have unimproved property, what does that value tax base bring in? And so the minute it's improved, that tax value is going to go up. So it's capturing that increase, that delta, and then just using that as a reinvestment tool. So I don't know if there's questions on any of these, if there's something you would like more information on.
Yeah, I hadn't looked at that list yet, so. Yeah, we just got it. Yeah.
What we'd like to do is just kind of open it up for discussion and see what your thoughts are. I know it's a lot of information to digest at once, and we sincerely appreciate you guys taking time and allowing us to present this to you. But really just looking for comments, feedback, if there's things that you would like us to explore more or come back with, kind of like detailed workings of how each program would work. One of the ones on here is a public-private partnership, a P3 opportunity. I believe I had shared with you previously last year when we attended the Chamber's Future Flagler focus, and we talked about business development and growth in our community and what lies ahead for not just Flagler, but the cities as well. We presented, and at the end of that meeting, I was approached by a gentleman who had a business contact who was interested in coming to Flagler. Well, it's been a year, and they're still interested, and that particular entity is looking to do a P3 with Flagler County and the City of Palm Coast. and it would be for the construction or development of a, commercial industrial park. I don't know if that's something that this board is inclined to do, but certainly we can come back with more information if it's something you would like to consider. That's why we have it out there as one of the potential incentive packages.
Yeah, one of the things we talked about before, and we talked about it, and we kind of had a feeling about on the board here, and one was, we buy land, and then we try to incentivize that for people to come. And there wasn't a lot of support from the board on that when we discussed that. Donnie, do you remember that? Something about that? You don't? It was going to be something we were talking about when we were doing the strategic plan or something else. And we talked about us buying land. And I thought that the feeling of the board up here was, we have a lot of land that we own now. So before we start buying more land for business, we should, make sure we're looking at what we have already. I'm absolutely sure we had that discussion. And the overall feeling was, let's, before we start buying land for an industrial park, we look at what we already have. But I might be wrong on that, but my memory's pretty good on that.
Well, we are in the process of bringing back what was referred to as kind of like the lazy assets, but I can tell you, we don't have any land holdings right now that are prime for commercial industrial development. So if we had those, it would not be a matter of buying the land. We would be coming back to you with a potential project. This would involve purchasing property that is prime for development, for commercial industrial opportunities. One of the ways, I guess, that you could look at it is the fact that it would require the county and the city working together to come up with some, I don't know what that looks like, but the potential client that we're talking to is looking at a minimum of 50 acres up to, I believe it was 200 or 250 acres. Certainly, they would start with the 50. And we did talk about internally, what would that look like? And if we, county and city, potentially owned this property and worked with a client to develop and bring in a base of people, they have a portfolio of potential businesses that they typically work closely with, that once they invested in the infrastructure and started going vertical and building facilities, our partner, which would be this outside private entity, would then either buy us out, meaning the county and the city, for the land value of what that cost was, and would take it down incrementally. So instead of the developer having to come in and buy the land and develop it, they would look to us to partner with them, and then they would pay us back as those buildings were being built, whether they were leased or, sold. We would then be reimbursed for the money that we were out for that land purchase. So then that money could either be reinvested into additional properties, or maybe it would pay off the loan if we had to take out a loan to do this. But, what does that look like? We'd have to come back with a contract. We do have a draft that was provided for projects that they've done like this in Georgia. So if that is something that the board is inclined to do, certainly we can get more information on it and bring it back. But this entity is interested in moving forward rather quickly, sooner rather than later. So.
I don't know that I have enough information even to go on that yet, but
No, it would have been good to have some of this ahead, to read ahead. But
Well-
yeah, I don't know enough to ask questions at this point.
Well, the purpose today was just really to give you an overview of, looking at Florida in general, where do we compare with the other states, and then hone in on how do we become competitive within the state of Florida. Right now, we currently have no incentives currently provided other than those that were provided previously through job creation grants. I believe we only have one company left that we are paying. We just have one. So we have not had any other incentives since that one.
Is that Goya Sales?
Yes, it is.
Typically, and I'm green in this, so in the participation in that strategic site inventory program, Isn't there an opportunity at that point to find like overlay type zones where we could say, if you develop within this track, we're willing to offer just ad valorem tax abatement so that they know, or would we not be creating overlay zones when we identify sites of what we're willing to do and not do to incentivize up front? Or are we thinking that the county would just do it by a deal approach by basis, like, every time someone comes to us, then we determine what we want to do out of our toolbox for that property and that employer? Is that what we're thinking? Or are we thinking we were just going to try to like say, here's a, 280 acres where, we would like to apply this if you, incentivize you up front to come?
I think it depends on the project, it depends on the investment, it depends on
So we would be
a lot
doing like a we would be doing it by deal approach, by property, by person, by,
Yeah, so like depending on.
we have all these tools. If we
Here's your
identify
tools. Yeah,
these
so
tools, we
depending
say we're going to
on-
offer 4 of these tools, but it's going to be by project basis, right? As opposed to, I think the city of Bunnell right now is saying with that tangible property tax abatement, they're just allowing it for anyone or that comes in or.
We're trying to be choosy about what type of industries we want, and so we're going after more of your high-paying jobs and the ones that are lacking in our community. But I think it would end up being specific to each project where, what does that investment into our community look like, and what does that equate to as far as quantity of jobs, value of jobs, investment into facilities within our community, what does that look like? When you look at the SSI model, what they do, it is those 5 phases. The first one is just to identify, it's really site discovery, where they're going to come in and they're going to identify areas, using some sort of like logistics-driven suitability models, and they're going to come up with some analysis of what they determine to be the best locations. So they're going to be meeting with selected staff members that come from various disciplines or backgrounds. And then they start doing more of an in-depth look to, expose any potential flaws that may compromise, I guess, the different sites. So there's like a whole preliminary due diligence that they do, followed up by the pursuit of real estate purchase at fair market value to really advance the property to the market, to get it for sale. And then that's when they would start like the formal due diligence, doing more of that physical site survey, documentation as far as assessing site development advantages, risks, things like that. And then the final phase, or phase 5, is more of that branding and marketing, which would then take the properties and make it more of an informational package to be competitively exposed, to
Yeah,
bring
that's
people
what I
here.
think you see in Volusia County and St. John's, and I'm wondering if that's why well, I'm sure there's many other reasons why they have growth, but you can get that instant, if I build here, I know that I'm open to A, B, and C. Like they already tell them, if they build in a certain area or zone, they're going to get, one of these 3 tools, and I don't know if that's, and that's an instant in the marketing package for that area.
It is, and that's kind of when we were talking about these collaborative materials that we want to market Flagler. In that portfolio, it would, have the county's logo with all of the cities represented, but it would have, sheets of information in there that to any prospective business looking to come into our community, it has the county's demographics. It has the city of Bunnell or the city of Palm Coast, the city of Flagler Beach. But then within there, you'll have all of the county incentives that are being offered as opportunities. It doesn't mean you're getting every one of them, but it depends on what type of project. It needs to be further evaluated. But you'll also have in that packet what the city of Bunnell offers and what the city of Palm Coast offers, kind of as like a one-stop shop. Here's all the information on our community, and let them go back and make the determination on where do they want to be situated in Flagler County. But it's being able to market ourselves. We currently are not doing this
Right.
because we don't have anything we're not providing those type of
I mean,
incentives.
you say paper, we'll also be doing the websites probably.
well,
correct?
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to really update those.
Everything that we have available, if you look at like Osceola County with their Neo City, and you look at everything that they've done there, if you go to a lot of these different websites, I mean, they're very robust. They talk about everything that you have, everything from, you know, helping train staff to, you know, which we do have
Yeah,
available.
Well, they pull in that commercial MLS, and you can click right on the property and know that, you know, these 3 incentives are available for that property. And I don't know if that just helps an out-of-town business make a decision that much more quicker than calling us.
They're looking at our website probably right now. I mean, they're not, you know, driving to our community looking to meet with somebody. They're remote and they're looking and they're seeing at what information's out there. And so what we're trying to do is be competitive with the other folks in Florida. So when I didn't send this to you electronically, but the PowerPoint presentation, if you click on any of these tabs, and I can send you just the spreadsheet and you can click on it, it'll direct you to each one of these entities' websites and it'll tell you exactly what they're offering. It'll drill down in detail as to, you know, what information, so what's being offered in these different programs. So if you wanted to go to Clay County, for instance, and see, you know, what is it that they're offering as far as industrial development revenue bonds. It'll tell you everything that they're doing within that community. Clay County, the gentleman who runs that program, he actually came down here. We met with him. He is a wealth of information, knowledge, and you look at how they're marketing themselves in Clay, and that's why right now we don't have any of these boxes checked. You know, we just have been talking about it, but at some point we need to really say, okay, do you want us to go back and do the research to bring back each one of these? We're not asking for a decision today that, yeah, you like every one of them, but at least give guidance to staff so that we can go back and do more drilling down of the information, come back to you, allow you more time to evaluate, and what does that look like? It's not that we're looking for you to make a decision today, but just some sort of conversation, feedback, so that we can, you know, prepare our community as we continue to grow. What is it going to take to entice people to come here?
Yeah, I just want to say that since I've been here a while, it wasn't that these other things didn't exist, but in the past, we eventually focused on the first one, ad valorem tax abatement, like with the Goya sales, and we kind of gave up on most of the other ones. Now, you may not agree with me, but that's the way I remember it. And so I think this is really a toolbox is we have here, right? So we have different, maybe there's some different things we can do, but in the past, we kind of went away from that and really just focused on the, you know, you get 10 more employees next year and 20 more the next year, then you get more incentives. But we haven't done this recently, at least in the last 6-7 years since I've been here.
No, I would agree. I think that, you know, under prior administration, maybe it went away, but we can't continue to wait and not do anything because we need more business and commercial growth in our community. When you look, you know, I go back to our tax base, 8% is what you currently have for commercial or industrial, and it's not all improved property right now. It's, you know, I think it was 6.4. That can't cover the tax burden on the community when it's largely reliant on residential units, you know? So we need to, you know, start thinking ahead and getting out in front of it, which is why we were recommending, you know, these 8 categories so that we could at least evaluate them, come back with further information. If we choose not to go with half of them, I mean, at the end of the day, it's more than we have today because right now we have nothing, you know? Yes, sir.
Do each of these
Commissioner
have to be approved by ordinance, a framework that we approve? Or how does it move forward so that it's transparent to the people that are looking at these, you know, what it consists of and how it could help them? So I don't know, moving forward, if we have to address every single one of them individually and approve some sort of framework so you can move forward.
Do you want to?
Well, speaking very generally, at the moment, I guess anything would be handled on a case-by-case basis with an individual contract with a business. If you wanted to promulgate one of these as a policy, It could be done by resolution, it could be done by ordinance, either way. Certainly if it involved things like permitting and land uses, we'd probably want to do it by ordinance. It's hard to be more specific without a particular program in mind.
Right. I just, I think, as I look at this, if I'm looking to Flagler, or if I'm looking to this area, I mean, this is the kind of checklist that I think anybody would be looking at, but it needs to be out there. And just like you said, if you click on one of the links, it's going to take you to a more detailed description, and that may generate the phone call to have a meeting and talk about it. But it's got to be, we have to have that, as you said, the competitive advantage. So I mean, as I'm looking at this, and again, depending on what business I'm in, these may have different meanings or hierarchies. Some of the checks. But obviously, Clay County looks like a very business-friendly place to relocate. And I think the objective is to make Flagler within this area the favorable location. So I think each of these, obviously, we've seen the problem we have with the tax base. We need to pursue as many viable options as possible. And the other point is not necessarily just in recruitment, but on existing businesses at all. I personally would like to see some opportunities to invest in our local businesses that have high wage growth potential, and see what that looks like as well, because I don't want to lose businesses to other surrounding counties that are offering incentives. So I think that plays a part of it as well. But I think the low-hanging fruit out of these, identify the low-hanging fruit and come back with us on ones that we can publicize and produce marketing material on as quickly as possible, and then start looking at some of the other ones that may take a little more time to develop and vet appropriately.
Any other comments?
I don't know if you need a specific consensus from us unless you want to come back with the low-hanging fruit ones. And
I think that I appreciate your input and your guidance, and certainly I think that these that we identified are the ones that we felt, initially would probably provide the best value for our community. We'll go ahead and we'll start working on them, and as as we start pulling the information together, we'll come back to you and share that so that we can have another conversation. And some of these are, like you said, low-hanging fruit. I think some of them are a lot easier, but we'll put together a more robust plan of each one of these and then definitely come back to you with that.
I'd like to also see how we progress from a website standpoint from reaching out. Like, take a snapshot today of what we are doing and the available information, and then in 6 months, a year down the road, I'd like to see how that looks comparatively in the progress we've made on making our website more business friendly and more intuitive, especially as we make progress on each of these checks.
Okay.
Anything else, commissioners? No?
Well, just one historical fact, that when I started here in my first term, we had a budget of about roughly $500,000 a year for business development. And our budget now, it wasn't working, and I think we agree, but it's a lot. We moved it into the tourist development business part of our staff, and I think we just have one employee now that directly gets, their salary is based on business development. So you have to look in the context of where we are and what we've done in the past, and then try to make it better now. But, I mean, you have to admit, we did, most of us who were here, we went along with that along the way, just for reference purposes.
We have to leverage our other municipalities as well, though. We can't do it all.
No, it does take all of us working together, and some of these things, don't really require a lot of upfront cash for us to be able to invest in. In talking to staff, though, you bring up a point about the economic development budget. Right now, they have probably about $50,000 in their operating. So that's your promotional marketing materials, and
Yeah,
it's not that
I
much.
guess that's something to think about as we go into budget season, if we're going to want to implement marketing material and an upgraded website and any costs that come from this.
And I would think that where we have check marks, there should be check marks under Benell and Palm Coast for all the same stuff. If we're going to present a countywide business incentive.
We would be giving, the incentive outside of the municipality? Let's say the property annexes into the municipality. Would the incentives go away? Some of them
No.
would?
No, it's
that's
a
my
county,
point.
no, what we're providing as a county is completely different than what the cities would provide. Everybody who is in Flagler County pays into Flagler County taxes. So if you're looking at doing some sort of an ad valorem tax abatement, that's coming out of the county's portion, not the city's.
But if we do something like a fast-track permitting, but then they're not technically developing into the county, who's doing the permitting?
That's
We
something
would
like
need all of them to be on board with that?
each one of these, that's why we have to detail down in.
Right.
And so right now, and I haven't brought it forward to you because it hasn't officially happened in the way of an interlocal. But City of Benell is asking us to look at taking on their permitting and their reviews, their inspections and stuff. So, if that's something, well, then that's going to be on us. I know that the City of Palm
got it.
Coast currently does fast-track permitting,
Okay.
but when they, when
But
we
if
were going through this, it's not on here.
A fast-track permitting and certain deliverables, will the municipalities be able to accommodate, if they end up being it within there?
Yeah, we're going to have to
that's
work
the-
with them, and
yeah.
what would be on our website would be, if you're an unincorporated, here's what you can expect. Here's the expectations that you're going to receive from us. And that's why I say it's important that we market ourselves with the cities, because some of these items may not be coming from us. They may be coming from City of Palm Coast or City of Benell. So how do we market ourselves, as a collective group? Because some of these, depending on where they take shape, may involve them. So,
So hopefully, we can just, like Andy said, identify the low-hanging fruit we can implement right away and get the municipalities on board with some of it, if it requires them to be, and then update for it so that we have progress sooner than, 2 years from now.
okay, well, thank you. I appreciate it. And we'll go back and take a look at these in a little bit further detail and then provide you all with another round of this. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, next up, International Building Maintenance Code.
This is an exciting one.
Chairman, members of the board, Chuck Miranda, Assistant Growth Management Director. Staff was directed several meetings ago to come up with a better updated process for property maintenance. This is just a piece of the puzzle. This is going to go along with the ordinance that's going to amend Chapter 8 and Chapter 9 of the Code of Ordinances. Chapter 8 being building construction and Chapter 9 being code enforcement. So it's not the Land Development Code, it's the Code of Ordinances that we will amend as directed.
It's the code of what?
Code of Ordinance
Okay,
versus the Land Development Code, which is in the part of the Code of Ordinances.
okay.
So what we've come up with is a tool that we are seeking direction to use. It is the International Property Maintenance Code, also known as the IPMC, developed by the ICC, the International Code Council, which also developed the codes that were put in the Florida Building Code, including our commercial code, our residential code, plumbing, mechanical, electrical, and others. So this corresponds with these codes to avoid conflicts and to flow with the codes. So the scope of the IPMC establishes minimum requirements for the maintenance of existing buildings. It applies to all residential and non-residential structures. As I said, it includes minimum requirements for premises, structures, and equipment, establishes standards for light, ventilation, space, heating, and sanitation. And one of the main points here, it allows for administrative enforcement and penalties. It's very clear on that. And it includes safeguards that allow for emergency action when required for health and safety reasons. Now, it's been adopted by 41 states. There may be more now that may be outdated. And in Florida, several counties have adopted, including Orange County, Charlotte, and Alachua. In the local jurisdictions are South Daytona, Daytona Beach, and several others that have adopted this code for use. And we also, our building official, Bo Snowden, he was in an organization that adopted and used the code, so we're very familiar with it. We have decades of staff that have used the international codes, so we have a lot of experience in codes, and this is one that we would use as a tool. The development of this code is to protect public safety and welfare. It does not increase construction costs. It does not restrict the use of new materials, productions, or methods of construction. So there's no preferred treatment to particular types or classes or materials. It does not discriminate. In the maintenance of this code, it's updated by the ICC every 3 years. It's a very open code. There's many individuals and parties involved. It's vetted very thoroughly. Now, the most important thing are the benefits to staff and the public.
Move your slide.
Excuse me. The benefits to the public and to staff. As I said, it's fully compatible with all the international codes which are in the Florida Building Code. And it's the nation's model housing and property maintenance code. And it would be a tool for us that provides for flexibility in gaining compliance with the maintenance of properties. And one of the things it does versus what we have in our code now, it provides with a definitive appeal process. The property owner has 30 days to appeal. It goes to a magistrate that we're going to also put in ordinance. So there's a third-party decision maker on an appeal for a property owner, which would benefit the property owner and the county as far as the process. And another thing it does, it defines criteria for unsafe and dangerous structures and conditions. I think there's 20-some criteria how to deem a structure as being unsafe or dangerous. And as I said, it provides clear direction as to what we have in the code now, which is the Flagler County Unsafe Building Abatement Code in Chapter 8 of the Code of Ordinances. So it's very easy to adopt. It's mostly fill in the blank. We would have amendments to the code, our own amendments as we adopt it. And as I said, it will be adopted in Chapter 8 of the Code of Ordinances. So what we're seeking is the direction as to whether or not we want to adopt this tool for us to use in order to deal with property maintenance. And we would be bringing an ordinance at a future meeting. I'll stand for questions or comments.
Well, does this only apply to government buildings?
No, it applies to all buildings and
So
structures.
if a fast food joint looks like it's going to seed, we can go in and make them,
We would, there's provisions to give us a scope of work to repair or rebuild. Yes.
Or an old rundown hotel.
old rundown hotel,
Yeah.
And
or a
it would work.
county building in front of a lake?
It would work the same way as other jurisdictions do it. It's just a more efficient way of doing it.
So I'm just, we have the authority under this, if we pass it, to go tell Wendy's that they need to do maintenance on their building. We can do that.
Yes, that's correct, with the proper posting, yes.
Just, I take it this has been around a long time. It's international.
Yes.
Why haven't we done this before?
We have talked about it over the years. I think our legal department had some questions on it, but I think it's ready to go now, and it would be a useful tool for us.
Ready to go because they've improved it, or is it the
I
same
think,
as
I
it's
think
always been?
it's staff's decision that we need it at this time. It has been around, the latest was 2021, the latest update. Many other jurisdictions are adopting it
Many other, right?
now
Not
or
all.
in the, I think Daytona Beach adopted it in, I believe, 2018, 2019.
So is this something we would, if we passed, we'd give a copy to every business in the county? So they know what they have to do?
That's a possibility, but it would be in our code of ordinances, and it's online too. It's available online. The whole, it's just the same as the building code is.
It
Then we'd
sounds,
have to note, yeah, if it was online, we'd still have to send out a letter to every business and say, this is our new rule.
Well,
These are our new rules.
it would apply to residential structures too, so it would be on our website. It would liken to the Florida Building Code, somebody wants to see it, they're gonna look online. It applies
So it applies to residential
Yes.
homes as well?
all structures and buildings and systems in the county.
now, you said that it's been around a while. Does our legal department have anything to say? In other words,
this-
just adopting this is
I mean, we're
possible?
gonna have to hire 10 more people to implement this?
I don't think we will. We have our code enforcement division, we have our building official or building inspectors. I think we have enough staff to implement this.
A big county, relatively speaking, for one or two people.
And it would be after, say, a storm event, we would use this to provide maintenance in condemned buildings, if you want to use the word condemn, unsafe structures, fire structures, which we have several a year.
Andy?
What is our existing chapter based on? Who's,
It was based on, I believe, it was from the 80s. It's the abatement code, unsafe structures. It's outdated. It doesn't have all the processes that this one has in it. It references several codes that are not in force within the state.
and so if I can dig deeper, what are we trying to fix with this? Is there a specific issue that arose that said,
Yes,
we
the-
finally have to do something?
Yes, there was. Because of the direction we were given by the board to rewrite an ordinance, this would be the part of it. This would be the fill-in-the-blank section on property maintenance.
Okay, so as we delve into the land development code or fix, maybe not the land development code, but
Well, I think we would do an ordinance sooner than that. We would modify Chapter 8 and 9 and place this in the place of our Article 10, which is unsafe abatement.
would this have helped? Would there have been extra tools in the toolbox to help us with Old Dixie Highway and the hotel?
I believe there would. There's more criteria that's used for this. There's more specified criteria. And like I said, the process, the legal process gives a 30-day appeal period. If they don't respond, then we could demolish it.
That's what I think, from, as far as, property owners' rights and stuff, I think the appeal process, what's currently available to a property owner?
They have an appeal, I believe it goes to circuit court, I believe it goes to court, yeah. So it's more of a tedious, a long period, where in this case, we would have a designated magistrate that we would assign the appeal process to, and it would be, like I said, 30 days. And then we would set a hearing through our magistrate that we have contracted out versus the circuit court.
Yeah, just mention magistrate, a little bit like we do on the VAB, where if there's issues about the tax structure and that kind of thing, we have a magistrate who comes in and reviews that kind of thing and kind of makes decisions.
In a
I don't,
magistrate,
I'm thinking of magistrate. It seems to me like, it's kind of like we do for the VAB.
and when we rewrite chapters 8 and 9, we're going to include a magistrate in there. We don't have provisions for a magistrate where we could use for code violations too. So right now, our process in code enforcement is also circuit court, Sean. So it kind of, especially during COVID, and even now, it takes a while to put cases on the court, where if we had a magistrate on contract, we could assign cases, say, every month for the IPMC and for code enforcement. So it'll be a less lengthy process here for the public.
And then one final question. I guess, does this require one public hearing, or can we make it two just to make sure we get a proper public input?
I think 2 is advisable for something this significant. There were a number of questions that were raised. I would like to also add some comment and some answers. This arose, I think, based on 2 different things that were happening at the same time. One was a preemption by the state legislature of how we regulate contractors, a pretty significant preemption that we were already working on. And when the board gave us direction to look a little more closely at how we condemn buildings and go through that process. And so the 2 were kind of married together in one ordinance. And in my opinion, the international code is an improvement on our current code, which is not horrible, but it's quite dated. It did well for a time, but it needs a freshing up. And the international code does have more precise standards and I think less vague provisions, so that hopefully, we'll see how it plays out if approved, but the goal would be that there'd be less disputes, less gamesmanship. You can't always do away with all of that, but with the precise language in the code, it helps to diminish that. Chuck was also mentioning the advantages of having a magistrate. So presently, we rely on a civil citation system that doesn't have a lot of teeth behind it when property owners choose to stonewall or ignore us. The special master, by state law, once they issue an order, we can record that order, and it becomes a lien on the property. And so you could still have individuals who try to stonewall the process, but with a lien on the property, they have more incentive to cooperate and bring their buildings up to code.
And a magistrate has that power to do that?
By state statute, yes. Now, and the other thing, just my last comment, you can't prevent these cases from ending up in the court eventually. That could still happen even with this system in place. But it would be less likely because you don't go straight to the court. Instead, you go through this process with a special master, and that's how you get your due process.
I think something that kind of cropped up, looks like there's going to have to be some training of our people. I don't know who would do that training, but some training of our people to do this. I mean, this thing specifies size of fasteners, for instance. You have to use this size nail or this size screw. I mean, granted, it's very specific. It lays all that out. But I think we can't just say, okay, these are the new rules, and make sure our people are trained and understand what all this is.
So,
I'm still troubled with what would cause us to go inspect somebody? I mean, I'm a little hung up on
yeah.
that.
It could be based on complaints, it could be based on storm damage, on fire damage, so.
How about if I drive by a building and I say, that's a crappy looking building, and I call you guys and say, go inspect that?
It would start with code enforcement.
You can do that?
we do that now, I think.
Really?
Yeah. The problem is, at least I know, particularly in my district, is the enforcement can only go so far, and then people just don't respond.
And that's why Sean
Can't
had
go any
mentioned-
further.
So this
magistrate.
instruction would give us that power.
Yes, exactly.
But on the other hand, this is my concern is if we implement this, are we going to look for things that are unique to our county that we don't want to change? To, let's say, we don't want to go so strict on, garbage, I know that code covers garbage can placement, can't put it out before 5, you know, et cetera. Do we do that now? I mean, we're gonna look at are we going to look at it and go, that's too restrictive? Or, I mean, are we gonna be,
Staff will provide amendments to the code, cross-outs and underlines. So if we see something that we can't enforce or haven't enforced in the past, we can take it out.
I would think, for instance, salt air, you know, we live along the coast, and how long air conditioning systems last and things like that has a lot to do with the amount of deterioration caused by our unique climate, things like that. So I mean, I don't know. I haven't read the code, so I don't know, but that kind of thing could, how do you handle those unique situations?
It deals with the systems in a structure too. So if somebody, well, air conditioning is not required by the Florida Building Code, but say if somebody didn't have heat or water, that would be a noncompliance issue.
You know, it would actually, Heidi, it would actually get us around the attempts, the big attempt by the naysayers on our ability to regulate vacation rentals. One of their things is we have to treat all houses like we treat vacation rentals. And reading through this, and I didn't do a line by line, but what we asked, but it looks like everything we ask for in the vacation rentals is in here, including smoke detectors, and it's all in here. So, argument against.
I love the magistrate part. I mean, I think that's necessary,
gives
but I
it
don't
more
want to throw the
power.
baby out with the bathwater and say, well, here goes everything that we've done to implement this to cover the magistrate. And, because I'm worried we'll become really restrictive and to the level of the city, which a lot of people don't want to live in the city, you know, because of the restrictions with the code enforcement. But I guess we'll be addressing it as it becomes issues. Correct. And then anything we have as an ordinance now, like say the noise ordinance, that would supersede what would be in place here, or?
Yeah, the noise ordinance is also in the code ordinances. It's a different section.
Okay. Would be outside
care
of
of by the
9 and
sheriff.
10, or 8 and 9.
So a lot of things that are in this code we already have, you know, in the building code, in the existing building code, which it reflects. A lot of it's interior things that we wouldn't go in somebody's structure unless we are invited. And I'm going to say right of entry is kind of limited with any enforcement we do.
So I wonder if we go forward with this, and looking at this, if we could get examples of what we do now versus some of the bigger ticket items that come up, you enforce a lot. What would be the difference? And just like examples, you know?
Yeah, because
such
is
as-
this something where we'd have to go get our code enforcement if we're not getting cooperation, we'd have to go to the court and get a warrant to go inspect? Get to a
I
court
believe
judge to say,
it's a
yeah, go inspect them.
It's the same right of entry process, Sean. I believe it is.
Right, we wouldn't be changing that. We're not going to be kicking in someone's door or something. We have the ability now to get inspection warrants based on our own home rule power. I don't think we've used that very much.
Yeah, we have it in Article 10 of the.
This
code
kind of big
ordinances.
brother thing kind of, you know, scares me a little.
Yeah, I just don't want to be incredibly, if it would help to have some examples of things that you think are where it'd be helpful for us, you know, where you can't enforce now and now you can,
And I
or
think-
where, you know, it's apples to apple, just like some examples of most of your complaints are, whatever rises to a lot, where you can't enforce it now and how it's going to help you, and then where you think people will see a problem with it being too restrictive.
I think it's the process that is updated here. So it's
Yeah.
a process that we're looking at. A lot of the code things we already do. If somebody has broken windows in their house, we can enforce that. So it's going to mimic what we can do now per the Florida Building Code and per our ordinance currently. It's just a process in the additional criteria that we can use that is actually going to be codified versus, I'm going to say, per Florida statute or the building code.
I have one more naive question, like I always do. Is the term international, how does that, is this group based overseas, or what's the international side of this?
There's other countries that use this code also. So it's it can be
So
implemented.
if I wanted to go to the IPMC headquarters, where would I go?
I'm not sure what state it's in. Bo, do you know where? It's, trying to think of where the licenses go, somewhere in
Do
this
we have an
country.
example of other countries that use this?
I didn't look that deep. I just looked at the states. and
I
the
just think that
jurisdictions.
term politically is sometimes difficult to get people in the United States to jump on. So I wish it didn't say international.
That's the
I almost
same
wish
with-
it said national
That's the same with
property
all our
maintenance
codes.
code. But
One world government.
No, all our codes are ICC, so we can.
Okay, just a small point.
I'm just a little concerned. I want a reassurance that we're not going to make the building process any more difficult, because I get a lot of complaints about building in general, being the permitting process being
Yeah, I
complicated.
agree. This is it is very specific, even about where you can and cannot put a smoke detector. I mean, it tells you measurements and you gotta, so I mean, it's very specific in there.
I want to address Commissioner Pennington. This is for existing buildings, so our permitting process,
So we're not going to change that. All right, so it's existing.
existing buildings, property maintenance of existing structures.
I agree with that point, but if you're a builder and you know that this is now in effect, and it might change a few things, you'd want to, when you built the building, kind of comply with what's coming, because once it's built, then this is a maintenance
So
thing.
it corresponds to the Florida Building Code. So whatever's in the Florida Building Code, this is not above and beyond.
Let me add something. All 49 states use the ICC International Building.
Identify yourself so that,
Okay.
yeah. So
I'm
they,
Bo Snowden, the
there you go.
building official of Flagler County.
There you go. Thank you.
So the Florida Building Code is more restrictive than the ICC codes. We have hurricanes, we have all that stuff, so Florida decided to go out and make their own building code. So the ICC, all 49 states use that as their building code. I mean, that is the code that everyone uses, and the Florida Building Code is based off of that, along with a couple amendments for hurricanes and
I got to ask, who doesn't use it?
Florida. Florida doesn't use the ICC, we have our own code book. Yeah, as far as building code, it's,
So of the 50 states, we're the only state that
we're
doesn't
the
do it?
only state,
Okay, well, that's interesting.
That's interesting.
okay? So,
Well, the only thing I'd say, there was plenty of other coastal and similar cities and counties that you mentioned on there that have spent time with this that we can learn from. It'll go to public hearings. We can open it up and have residents come, builders come, talk positives and negatives. There'll be plenty of opportunity for feedback. If the administrator thinks this is important for us, I think, based on what I'm hearing, it's nice to have an up-to-date code and one that is updated regularly.
updated
so that we
regularly, that's
don't-
the big thing. It
so we
gives us
don't-
tools in the toolbox, and
Right.
it depends on how we use the tools is where the problems would occur.
Right.
Yeah, I just want examples of where it's going to, real life examples of where we think it's going to help us and where we think we could see, restrictive, complaints come from,
the
where
big one-
you would see where people would be like, I can't believe we implemented this, and because I just don't want to get 6 months down the road and people are being ticketed to death for.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's on the enforcement also, but
Yeah.
The big one is it'd be updated. It would go like with regular
Oh,
building
no, I
codes
think it
as
needs
goes
updating. I
on.
absolutely concur with that. And I just want, if we're using the out-of-box, I just want to make sure we're looking at what's unique to our county we don't want to lose, by using an out-of-box so that we can kind of strip out, say, we don't want to do that because, whatever. Or look for examples for that, where you think it could really trip us up.
But you did say you can modify it based on what we
Modify,
can and can't
yeah.
enforce and things like that. Okay.
Yeah, overall, I think it's good. I just modifying, what would work for our county better.
And the piggyback on Andy's comment, that it seems to me, reading through it, it sounds like a building code. That, because you've got to have the right kind of signs on the doors, and you got to have the fire, all the fire stuff in the right place and everything. So back to his question is, which was more restrictive, our building code or this? Do you think our building code is more restrictive?
I think it is, in my opinion, yes. When you build something, but it's not retroactive. I mean, if you built a building 40 years ago,
Right,
it's not,
right.
you're not going to go in there and tell them to start moving smoke detectors and everything else.
Right, yeah. Okay.
But if somebody is building a building now, once
That
it's
was
in
my question.
effect,
That's what Andy asked.
yeah, then it
Someone's
does.
building a building right now, this code book would not be used.
I would say, okay, we adopt the code, and it's in effect, and somebody starts building a building. Could he build it exactly the way he was going to build it before the code went into effect?
Well, he said this doesn't apply.
Maintenance.
It's a maintenance code.
I know it's maintenance, but
It doesn't apply.
even if somebody, the code's in effect, and the guy then decides to build a building, and then we come back after he builds it, and we say, well, you know, you didn't comply with this, where the smoke detectors are. Wouldn't it
The
be
smoke
good for-
detectors, I would almost guess that it's word for word right out of the
Okay,
building
okay,
code.
okay, forget it.
Florida's building code is more restrictive than the normal, so.
But not in every instant is the problem. It's probably in general true.
Right, but only because of our conditions, it's more restrictive.
Yes, when I talked about before, you know, in the coast, we have different.
Just a basic question. Does this make your job easier?
It gives us more tools, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I say move forward.
Yeah.
And just so you know, we looked it up online. They're headquartered out of Washington, D.C.
Barrier.
Let's go tomorrow.
They have other branches, but it is a U.S.
I want to go see it.
thing.
That's not better.
But I did see where Charlotte County, just putting it in perspective, it's another coastal community that was hit by a hurricane. They use this, they've adopted it. So does Orange County. There's a whole slew of other ones in the state of Florida, counties and cities that adopted it.
Well, if it's making our folks, it makes their job easier, then I think we should do this.
Well, but, yeah, I just want to see examples of where you think the residents are
good.
really
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
be
I think that'd be a good idea.
coming, beating down our doors.
Yep.
Because we did something. And, you know, just staff identify things that are unique to what we do here in the county that we think will be a problem for the residents.
Okay, anything else?
Awesome.
Anything else? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh, public comment, I'm sorry. Yeah. Anybody in the public wish to comment on today's proceedings? Come on up, Greg.
Whoa, yeah, that was a shock.
Well, that'll teach you.
That's a trick from the back.
Only for certain speakers does it.
Yeah, right. I know exactly. Wow. So we're going to start my 3 minutes that way. Here's the first thing I'm here on the economic. Greg Blasé, President and CEO of the Palm Coast Flagler Regional Chamber. I'm here on the economic development conversation that happened earlier, which I thought was a great conversation. And if you really think about, I've only been in Flagler County for 3 years, so this is the first time in my 3 years that we got together to talk about economic development and what we're actually going to do to move forward, to take words off of a page from the strategic plan, which we all sat through those meetings, and then put them into action. And so I felt that's what staff was presenting today. And I was glad that y'all were receptive to having more conversations about it. The chamber isn't recommending any of those incentives over anybody else, but somebody made the point up here that it is about not just Flagler County, but also getting the municipalities involved and all of us moving together as a cohesive unit, the chamber included, other organizations, realtors, and other groups included. So that to me was the most exciting, that we're talking about taking action and taking words and making them into reality. I wanted to address some of the comments and some of the data points in there, which were just stunning. They continue to stun me every time I see them, but number one is 87% residential and 8% commercial, with 1.5% of that 8% commercial being
Vacant.
yeah, being vacant. So when we think about, now somebody else made a comment about, business friendly. Wow, I can't believe Florida isn't that business friendly, because we're all kind of, I don't know, at least I am. I've been in the political world of Florida for a while. We know the Florida talking points since before Rick Scott, which is, this is the place to go. We're one of the business-friendly states. But that's not the case anymore. I mean, things are changing. We're getting out-hustled in a lot of ways statewide. Flagler County is changing. And for any of you that spend an amount of time with us or me at the chamber, you know that we're talking about there could be as many as 80,000 net new residents here by 2040. So really this is actually bigger than it seems, because in a way what we're saying is, the county is going to start to lead this conversation and in partnership with the other cities and other organizations to start to figure out one of the most important questions that face our community. What do we want the future jobs of this community to be? We know the people are coming here. What do we want those jobs to be? And with some of the SSIL thing that we talked about, where do we want them to be? Where can they even be located? So to me, that's really exciting. The second thing with my final 25 seconds here is going to be the competitive advantage, right? So think about the competitive advantage for Flagler County. What is the competitive advantage now? We're not competitive at all. That's what the boxes with the check marks show. So now it's up to us to take initiative and say what things work for Flagler, what things don't, and how can we move forward, and let's bring our partners together. So I'll stop at 3 minutes. I could talk all day about this, but thank you for the shocking joke there. But I look forward to working with you all as partners on this, because we're really vested in making sure that, at least the new chamber, our direction is we've got to move forward as a community. It's not just what we want, it's what all of us want, but we all got to fight for it, because you mentioned, Commissioner, these things run out of steam. We did this thing 6 or 7 years ago. This is a long-term play. We're talking about 20, 30 years, So every year we got to be focused on this. So thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate that. See no one else approaching a closed public comment, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We're adjourned.
Is that your first adjournment motion?